Okay, everyone, I think we're live here. Are we live? Looks like it. Does look like it. Gotta update my stream information on. That should be good. Good. So we're gonna go back through this debate. I was on a panel last night, and Great group, a lot of fun. We got a lot of good information out of this debate. We got a lot of good people in that panel, a lot of good opinions. But I wanted to go back through myself and also share some thoughts, and then even maybe break down some stuff and do a little research, because I know at some point or another I'm going to be jumping into a debate where they're going to be trying to clown on Trump. Again, it's not so much that I want to defend him, but sort of be able to debunk things that are flat out wrong, patent lies, all that stuff. So where is it? Okay, we got the debate going. Let me pull it up for y'all. News. So if you haven't seen this, it was a shit show, as one might understand. Both sides, I think. So my initial thought was Trump did a pretty good job at keeping himself composed, and then as Harris pushed and pushed and pushed on him, he kind of fell apart a little bit, got a little bit emotional. I think she kind of did the same. But I don't necessarily think it was a fair fight. Problem is, ABC, being the liberal news outlet that it is, I think there's a huge bias against Trump, obviously. And because of that, it was a bit of a three versus one campaign. And I know everyone, you're probably seeing that. You're probably seeing that a lot on Twitter right now, that it was 3v1. But it really was the truth. They didn't press her nearly as much as they did him. Cannon Speaks, what's up? Salute. Good to see you. Good to see you. If I don't get to your things, your chats, I apologize. I'll do my best. I did get my voice. I got your voice note, Nasmer. Thank you for sending that. You're 100% right. That was my immediate thought on the whole thing. It was not a good move. Not a good move. Not well said. But let's get into it. Let's start watching. What's up, Jared?
The high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special. The most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face. Historic.
Trump's hilarious.
The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world.
I'm watching at 1 1/4 speed. I hope that's okay. Hope you don't mind. I just, want to do it. Will Chad, what's up, man? It's fun having me on the panel. Interested to hear your thoughts on the next. Yeah. I'm going to go through stuff and sort of give my takes where I can. I don't know. This election cycle is pretty different for me as I've paid way more attention to what's going on. So again, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for joining on Twitch. Thanks for joining on YouTube, wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, like the stream for me if you can. Share it out. Share it with people on Twitter. Get some more people in here talking about it. But I've been trying to do a lot of like fact checking. I wrote a shit ton of notes last night on the debate, like stuff that was said during the debate that I want to try and look at and somewhat fact check and give my takes on.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis.
I hate the word unprecedented. I'm so sick of the word unprecedented. It's insane. Out here getting 4.7 KD ratios on Space Marine Online, baby. Crushing people with the heavy class.
Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak.
So their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. Remember that detail right there. I want to write that down. Microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. You'll notice something that happens during the debate. The very first person to overspeak, have their mic on. I bet you can guess who that is. Bet you can guess who that is.
Pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Sorry, I'm fighting YouTube and its ads. I don't have YouTube Premium because I'm not a boy.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
So like that right there was so cringe for me because I think I understand. I mean, you understand like what is happening in that moment. She is asserting her authority, right? This is the girl boss play where she beelines it across the stage. He's just going to his podium. She is just launching herself across here, and oh hi, I'm Kamala Harris. Hi. You know, it's smug in a very professional way. I don't know what the word is for that.
Kamala Harris.
See, like it's almost I don't know. I don't want my own personal bias to get in the way, but this almost seems like rude in that like you're sort of breaking his space, like meet right here, meet in the middle. But instead you're sort of encroaching on his area. And in some ways he looks kind of, I don't know if he looks weak in this moment, but I don't know if it necessarily looks great. But I think her body language and her assertive nature, and almost like in a very condescending way, like, hey, I'm going into your space because I'm trying to make it my space. I didn't really like that. I thought it was awful. Or not awful. I thought it was a very weird way to go about it. And it could have just been nerves too. This almost seems very like, oh, I'm kind of nervous. Like, oh, like I'm meeting you for the first time. Of course, she was given the questions. Her best friend is high up in ABC and probably in the next. Yeah. Yep.
Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Well, good
Welcome
to see you.
to you
Have
both.
fun.
It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off?
Did he misspeak there?
Is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your
He did misspeak. You and President Trump were elected 4 years ago. I didn't catch that.
opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was...
Do you believe that Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? So this is, again, she's starting off with her own personal diatribe about herself, right?
Was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too...
So this is great that she has a plan, but that's not what the question was. The question was, do you think that we're in a better place than we were 4 years ago? That's the question. Not do you have a plan for the future? Because how I think of it is like when you start answering a question this way, you think, yeah, we're not in a place where we're not in the place we should be, but I have a plan to get us to a better place.
Too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib.
So it's my understanding that J.D. Vance proposed something similar to this. It was a $5,000 tax credit for young families with children. This is helpful. Again, like my wife and I, we've gotten tax credits for based on our children, and it's certainly helped offset some costs. But again, it's a stolen policy. But again, not answering the question. That's kind of what I want to focus on, is the fact that it's not answering the question here. She's been asked, are we in a better place than we were 4 years ago? And she's talking about her plan for getting us out of our current place. So essentially answering the question of, no, we're not.
Buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
I'd be interested to see how this works. I'm sure there's, this is one of those policies that she could implement or say she wants to implement, but probably wouldn't take effect until the very end of her presidency, if not the next one. These things just take time. It takes years a lot of times for these things to come through, and it's not just instant. Yeah, and tax credits on stuff like, homes, like giving first-time home buyers $25,000. It generally, it's offset by increased prices, unfortunately.
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax.
That's something she made up. But also, like the plan behind tax cuts for the ultra wealthy or for these big businesses, I'm not shilling for them, but the idea behind it is that it brings manufacturing jobs and keeps businesses in America, and it doesn't push them to other countries who have limited or little to no regulation. It keeps them here on American soil. So America gets that money, not these other countries. That's the idea behind it. And by taxing the uber rich, again, like this fallacy that the ultra wealthy don't pay their fair share. It's just a matter of like they get their money is is earned differently than the average person. The more you make, the more you take, yes, but like they're already paying, like the top 1% already pays 50% of the income tax. So it's not fair to say they need to pay their fair share. They are paying their fair share. He's trying to keep manufacturing jobs here in the US.
Which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
So that absolutely did not answer the question. And here's the thing, and this is why it's an unfair debate, because Muir here will stop Trump at the end of his rant on something and be like, yeah, but you're not really answering the question. He does it a couple times. Let me get your take on this. Like, he'll try and correct him. He didn't do that with her. And I understand this is the very first question, and maybe it's nerves, maybe it's just people being, all amped up, but she didn't answer the question. Are we in a better place than we were 4 years ago? Her answer to me said, we're not in a better place, but here's my plan to get us to a better place.
Well, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other 75 years pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation.
And just for those who don't know, tariffs they're tax imposed on a country on their goods and services. So it's a way for us to essentially make money based on like bringing in on company. How do you say it's a trade barrier that raises prices and reduces the available quantities of goods and services for the U.S. Business and the consumer. Is essentially what it is. And these help us, but also other countries don't like them. But it's something that's necessary and that Trump has implemented before that has helped us. But again, they want to avoid this. And the Biden administration has kept tariffs in place that Trump put in. So even Harris believes that, Kamala Harris believes that these are effective, or at least the current administration that she is involved with does believe it.
Like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for
the 21% inflation was a number I wanted to check. I kind of want to like
every class. On top of inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because
21%. Excuse me. Let's see here. Oh, I think I see what he's saying. So CNBC article talks about cost of, so this was back in 2023. Inflation numbers don't include groceries or energy. That's how they can look low. This one does take into consideration the consumer price index that some people look at. In that time, the cost of essential groceries, utilities, and gas increased by 20% or more. So between April 2021 and March 2023. So, this is one of those things, if we're taking a rational approach to it, I think that COVID is a huge unknown that people don't really know how to account for, that basically shut the economy down, kept people inside. Now, through Biden's administration, you have people getting back to normal life. But costs of goods and services are still going out. But in my opinion, you're seeing the effects of COVID still through all this. I mean, our economy, the workforce changed, people staying home, jobs eliminated because they're now remote. So it's such a hard thing to really gauge on whose fault it really is. Yeah, see, the cost of groceries is up by almost 20%. So I don't think it's fair for her to laugh at that, because it's very obvious that from, again, April 2021, which is, her administration, through early last year, you have, giant price increases in some respects. 7% in fruits and vegetables, and it just goes up from there. Milk up 20%, bread, chicken up 23, 20%, eggs up 50%, margarine up 54%. Shouldn't eat fucking margarine anyway, just eat butter. It's better for you. Again, which is pretty, I honestly don't care about the price of margarine. You shouldn't be eating margarine. It's so bad for you. I think you could use it as like engine lubricant. But yeah, these numbers are pretty bad. Now, as far as I've seen, a lot of the stuff has gone down over the past year, but we could, you could further look into it. Sorry. What the hell?
Because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over.
So the Aurora stuff, I have found a few articles that say that those news stories have been a bit blown out of proportion. That specific gang, I did say this last night on our panel. The gang that is responsible, has been reported to have taken over apartment buildings, is 100% present in the United States, and their numbers are growing. And there is some worry about that, especially between New York, a lot in New York, and in some of the border states of Texas. There's a Venezuelan gang. They are worried that they're targeting like military buildings or installations. That, again, that's speculative. It was some stuff from not Project Veritas. The O'Keefe Media Group has covered this a little bit. Again, I take him with a grain of salt because he's been a bit suspicious in the past, but they have looked at articles. I'm sorry, they've looked at numbers and some instances that have happened recently. But as far as them taking over an entire complex in Aurora, Colorado, is a bit hyperbolic. So the management group reported that they did. There was definitely people that were doing stuff. I think there was like 6 people who were there, 5 of which have been arrested and charged. Those apartments have been pretty run down for the past decade, I've read, and that management group has done little to nothing to do anything about it. So there is some conflicting reports. The police have been notified, but they did not see any real credible threat there. And this is from the Denver papers that I'm reading this, multiple papers that I have saved. So this is a place that Trump has to be careful where he wades. And even the Springfield, Ohio stuff he started getting into, which not great. And again, and this is the other point, he's not addressing the question of, is the economy in a better place than it was 4 years ago? And I think he needs to do a better job at answering that question and refuting. I mean, you can refute what she says, but stay pointed to the question, because if you start going off, then it just makes her look better because you're rambling. She's obviously rambling, but she looks a little bit better doing it.
Over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous.
I think that's a mistake. I do think that's a mistake. So, of course, it's just my opinion on it. When it comes to being a presidential candidate, like Biden and Harris are not letting anybody into the country. You need to be specific in your language. I think if he had approached like their policies have allowed gang members to come in, through our southern border. That it weakens their position of like on the border issue anyway, because it's what's happening. There's more people coming across the border. Their policies are allowing it to happen and allowing for it to go relatively unchecked. Oh, that's a good idea. Let me see. Good idea, Nasmer. There we go. There you go, buddy. There you go.
They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again, and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk
I wonder if she'll actually answer the question.
About what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great.
Okay, this is a huge loss in my opinion for Harris. It's okay to attack what you believe is his issue with the economy, but you have to be honest about it. Like COVID is the reason that people were unemployed. Nobody was allowed to be at work. Companies laid off people, furloughed people. And to not mention that is just intellectually disingenuous. And you need to, as a Democrat, as someone who's supporting Harris, you need to acknowledge that. It's not Trump's fault that all these people were unemployed. Matter of fact, people were being demonized because Republicans were saying, we can go back to work. We don't need to be, locked up in our house. All the people that were saying, we need to be back outside. We need to get vitamin D. We need to be out there. They were demonized because we wanted to kill grandma. Like this is like literal insanity. You can't say that he left us with the worst unemployment rate. I mean, there's a huge caveat to that you need to acknowledge. Huge caveat.
Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century.
He had nothing to do. Like, so Trump is seriously. Like, I need to go back on that.
Harris, respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about.
I would love to. Just answer the question. Stop being like this. Jesus Christ.
About what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century.
Left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. So, am I hearing it wrong? Or did she just lay COVID at his feet? Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if the timeline of events doesn't work out in your favor, Ms. Harris, but he didn't have a choice. Had he been reelected, he would have had to deal with the aftermath. And all of this stuff would have been at his feet. like, it's, again, the intellectual dishonesty that she engages in really throughout this debate is quite amazing. I'm not saying Trump is perfect, but this is one of those moments where he didn't have a choice. He left office because he lost the election. So that goes to you now. He didn't leave you with anything other than a pandemic that was started in the Wuhan lab, got out, and then everyone got really sick around the world. Everyone did what they could. Wasn't perfect. Biden shilled for big pharma. Huge mistake. The end.
Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
What? What the fuck? The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. What day is today? Anyone? Anyone? I'll wait. Like, what in the hell is wrong with this woman? Again, the bold-faced lies that come out of her mouth. She can't even, like, there is a way to combat this and not be this disingenuous. But she refuses to, because this is how you rally people who don't actually think, right? You can give Trump an L, but also support him. You can give Harris an L and also support her. These are huge L's. She takes a lot of them, but this is how you rally your base. You rally them by appealing to emotion, which is she's doing right now. She's doing all of that. Nothing is backed by any sort of fact. It's all her opinion. It's all what she thinks happened, and she knows it's going to make people really angry and make it all clippable at the end of the day. Oh, it's your girl boss moment. Go, girl. Look at her dunk. Look at her dunk on Trump right now.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know.
It's nothing new. Every new administration cleans up the previous administration. You're not doing anything new, lady. Sorry to say.
Are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear.
Yeah, there's gonna be a bunch of name calling, and I'm willing to bet she's the very first one to call names.
Here tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
It was a nice try, again, an appeal to emotion, because people believe that Trump wrote Project 2025. They haven't been properly briefed on it, and what he does next is actually really smart.
Believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing
Still didn't really respond on, like, economy shit, but okay.
to do. As you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. Good. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over.
You did a pretty good job. You did what you could. I wouldn't say you did a phenomenal job, but again, that's just my opinion. I think you did what you could. You tried to strong arm the people that were trying to be, that were trying to do bad things, I guess, to general public. Trying to assert their authority. But again, I think you shilled for Big Pharma a little too much. And I think you lost a lot of trust in your what?
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Hey, thank you for that. Who do we get? Who we get? FYT Gug, thanks so much for your follow. Appreciate you.
For a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But
that was a good point. Yeah, the bounce back. Yeah, you recovered jobs that were already lost. There's nothing to brag about there. COVID demanded that we not have people in person, and in the Biden-Harris administration, of course you couldn't go to work. Now all of a sudden they have them back. Sweet, nice job.
Who's the one that created them? They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So,
Well, let's let her respond again.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America.
Our relative plans for the future. I would like to know what is I want to know what her actual opportunity is. That so? Is it only the stuff that she's mentioned? Tax breaks, the $50,000 tax break for small business, and the $6,000 tax credit to new families. Is that what she's talking about?
What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, too. He's more interested in defending himself because you've kept him in court for the past 3 years. Your administration has attacked him, engaging in lawfare to essentially keep him out of the race at every possible way. Lil Chad on YouTube says $50K tax break, small business, $6K tax credit, and $25K for first-time home buyer. Okay, so I mean that doesn't do anything. I mean the $50K tax break for small business. I'd be interested to see like what the stipulations are for that, but that doesn't seem like something that's like it's going to happen right away. Anyway, you're looking at a couple of years for that to be even implemented. $6K tax credit. You know, again, like the money's got to come from somewhere. The $25K for first time home buyer is just going to cause prices of homes to go up. Even the $6K child tax credit, like. The money's got to come from somewhere. You got to offset that cost. Jared Thorne on Twitch says he missed the opportunity to hammer on her record as a prosecutor. Every time she mentioned it, he should have hit her the way Gabbard did, keeping people locked up to fight fires and hiding evidence to keep a man on death row. Yeah, he missed opportunities there for sure.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President.
I mean, the plan is there. It's just, it's whether or not it's good or not, you know. Again, he's got to, you got to attack why it was not good. Why you believe it is not a good plan.
I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have
Well, you would have to so you're presupposing that that would actually happen. Which again, it's a dangerous game to play because it might, but also we don't know for sure that's going to happen. The idea behind the tariffs is that people will invest in American companies. That is the point. The point is stop buying stuff. You're going to be taxed if you're buying from outside of the country. We have a lot of manufacturing that can be done within this country. Now it's time to invest in that. Invest in that. Prices aren't going to, you're going to get a good domestic price, not to mention all the import costs anyway. Like there's no point in he just wants to keep the jobs in the United States. He wants to keep manufacturing in the US, investing in American businesses, not businesses overseas.
Higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Again, they can. The engaging in hyperbole is a weird. I mean, he does it a lot, but this is not the time for that. Fair wages make American-made products more expensive. Tariffs help level the playing field. Right. Meta, we're just going back over. We're reviewing the debate from last night.
The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration...
That was about the only fair question that he asked the whole time to her. Like, hey, yeah, you kept all these tariffs in place. What do you have to say for that?
Resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this.
Oh, real quick, guys, I gotta take a quick call. Take a quick call. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. Let's go back to
with COVID is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump will let you.
So now the origin of COVID is China, and now we can say the quiet part out loud. It's okay because it's politically expedient for her to do so.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father.
I think this was a mistake. I think bringing up the fact, this whole she's a Marxist thing is not a good play. I just think leaving it out entirely would have better suited him. It doesn't land with people, right? Like it doesn't, people who aren't really in the know of everything, they think, what? And then I just think people are sort of tired of hearing this. And I don't know. I understand if you hold that belief, that's fine. I just don't think it was the smart move in this case. You should have just, it's okay to attack her on what you think she's weak on, but this was not the time and place to say it. I don't think it's the time and place at all to say it.
There's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country,
I know why she's doing this like smug look. It's for clips. It's to meme on. It's to show people, oh, you're again, it's the girl boss move, and it's for the Democrats to say, see, look how strong she is. We need strong people like her to stand up to dictators and fascists like Trump.
And when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane.
Jared says she doesn't respond to his remarks about her dad. She only says he's Jamaican. No details. Everything is about her mom. No, I agree. I just don't think this stage, unless he really has something to nail her on as far as like her Marxism, I think it's lost on most people, and they're just gonna like kind of move over that. I just think it's not smart in this case.
Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor who's doing an
But yeah, he misspoke here. It's the Virginia governor.
excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute.
So again, this is not something I think he was well versed enough on. There was a clip that I saved. Someone posted it. I think it was like, oh no, did I not? Shit. I didn't save it. Here it is. So in 2019, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam endorsed post-birth abortion. So this is what I think he's referring to.
Committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure and explain her answer?
Yeah, and I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you first thing I would say is this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way.
Still don't think it's right. I mean, just because people consent to kill other people doesn't make it okay. It's a weird take.
And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities. There may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this...
So she's dilating, third trimester, fetus, what? Like, again, if we're talking about full term, or third trimester isn't necessarily full term, but we are really close to the end. But at this point, is it considered a fetus? I don't think so. I mean, you're talking about a baby.
Particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really...
So Trump was a bit brazen in his explanation of it, but doesn't mean it's not true in some respect. But this is, again, what he was discussing.
Blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
Sorry, but just because you agree to kill a human doesn't make it okay. And I think it's weird that, again, this is that weird sort of like leftist speak now where, I believe it's between a woman and her doctor, and we don't tell women what to do with their body. And it's like, well, third trimester, it's not your body anymore. Sorry. Like, if we're going to really go there, again, even the rare cases that people talk about is pretty bad. Because at this point, you're talking about a human completely distinguishable from the mother. I mean, it's all the way through basically, but still, like, this is a very, very weird take, but different from, I think, again, Trump is a little too brazen in how he describes what he's saying. But he's going about it in a much nicer way.
And do you think multiple physicians should have to weigh in as is currently required? She's trying to lift that requirement.
Well, I think it's always good to get a second opinion and for at least two providers to be involved in that decision, because these decisions shouldn't be taken lightly. And so, I would certainly support more than one provider.
Yeah. They'll find it weird.
Execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick.
But like 90% of abortions are done in the first trimester. Like, it is still an important statistic. It's not like there's a large quantity of third trimester or anything. But I mean, it shouldn't even be a thing. Medical is different. Medical is completely different than medical necessity is completely different. And he even says, like, rape, incest, and medical need, like, he has exceptions for it, but everything else is like, no.
By the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay.
You can't, again, this is not smart to engage in hyperbole. If you're going to quote someone say the quote, like, don't get up in your feelings about it. I would be very surprised if Tim Walz said you can execute babies after they're born. You know, like, that's not smart to say. You're out of here. See you later.
Okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal...
And I know he's battling the clock. That's why he's talking the way he is. But, yeah, it certainly doesn't help this case a lot of times.
Every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get...
Yeah, see, it's not, and this is where she fact checks him in real time. I don't believe it is her job to say it like that. So it's one thing if you want to point a question back at him and say, what state do you believe that this is legal in? And if it is true and he can rattle it off, then great. But if, again, I think this was a huge misstep on the part of the moderators, but it's quite honestly, can you really expect anything different from ABC? They're totally in the Democrats' pocket in this case. So it's, what's up, Ark? So yeah, I think of course they fact check him in real time, but they don't do it to her in the same way.
Your response to President Trump?
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that...
That's his presidential right. When one steps down or one dies, the president appoints the Supreme Court justice, and then they have a hearing and then vote on it.
They would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now...
And don't remember, the Democrats talked about packing the courts and how it would be so smart to pack the courts with Democrats. So, you know, increasing the size essentially so they get an advantage. Again, which only serves you in the moment. In the long run, guess what happens? Sometimes there's a Republican, sometimes there's a Democrat. Sometimes you're going to get Republicans who get to put in 3 or 4 justices. And other times you're going to get that only do 1 and vice versa. It only serves the people in power at the time that can make the change. So it doesn't make any difference. Sure, you could pack the courts, but A, it weakens the court, but also it only serves you in the moment, not in the long run.
Now, in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state,
No, so health care is different from abortions. The problem is that they're interpreting how the definition of abortion is being interpreted. In some OBGYNs, I think, they're flat out not doing it in fear of professional legal repercussions, rather, which I want to look into more because I don't know. You know, I know this isn't happening in a rampant fashion, and I know people. It's not like this is causing serious swaths of death or injury.
Provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest.
Trump abortion bans is a term she made up.
Understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next.
Yeah, well, again, this comes down to a states' rights thing. It's not Trump's, like, so people want to be out of, like, he wants government out of people's lives. Now the states are in it. It makes more sense for the states to decide on this. He's still the bad guy because it falls on him to, like, he should have the power to, like, dictate what people do and do not do. I don't know. It's very, so the whole thing is always very confusing to me.
That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply.
Yeah, he flubbed the Alabama IVF case. IVF was never attacked in Alabama. The judge just allowed the hospital to be sued for their negligence. Yeah.
Held beliefs to agree. The government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
It's not her body. Like, you know, again, the rape, incest, sexual assault, all that stuff in medical necessity are all exceptions that Trump supports and gets behind. So if that is the case, then sure, get the abortion. Now, there is an interesting conversation to be had about not punishing children for the crimes of their father, sins of their father. I know people don't like to hear that, and it's a really hard conversation to have. But you know, and I don't even know if I could necessarily go through with that if it were someone that I knew on the line. But there is a conversation to be had around it that I've seen people have, and it's difficult though. It's difficult to separate the emotion from the fact that you're talking about ending a life. Potential life that could live happily and be in great situations. But, you know, a lot of people aren't ready to have that talk.
I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out.
No one's going to jail for having a miscarriage. That is like that is the bold-faced lie.
In a car in the parking lot, she didn't want that. Her husband.
And that, you know, and if like one case of this is not indicative of a systemic issue.
Husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor.
So bringing up Project 2025 again, after he disavowed it and said he has nothing to do with it, is just stupid. Ark says, oh, I got a great question for you. Dave Grohl just admitted to cheating and fathering a child with a mistress. Are we upset he had a child outside his marriage? What if he had aborted the baby? I mean, I'm disappointed. I don't give a shit what these celebrities do. I'm disappointed that he would do such a thing. I mean, Dave Grohl, I mean, again, it's the problem with purity testing, right? He speaks out and says shit about Trump and how awful Trump is. And I'm not supporting him and he can't use my song because of X, Y, and Z. And then it comes out that he had a child out of wedlock, publicly admits it. What if he had aborted the baby? I don't know. I mean, would we have been upset about a rock star aborting a love child? I mean, I don't think it's right either way. I mean, I don't think it's right either way. I think if he screws up and has a child out of wedlock, or, you know, gets a woman pregnant out of wedlock, honestly, it's like one of those things. Like, well, now you gotta hold that bag, brother. Like like, it's just amoral to begin with. Charlie on Twitch says she's on autopilot right now. This segment was a prepared speech and she doesn't know how to deviate from it. For the context of the question. No, I agree, Charlie, 100%.
That would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and
yeah, some people would be more upset about him cheating than if he had gotten an abortion. I'm disappointed with both. Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely. You're right.
everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back.
Yeah, the Roe v. Wade thing's not a unanimous, like, it's wrong, it's not wrong. Like, people got to remember that. Like, there's people who are, like, they just want the states to be involved with it. They don't want, they don't care that it's a federal thing and that the states now have the power. Like, the idea of abortion is very much divided the country for a long time. It's not just men; women are involved in it too.
States, and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total...
I mean, it's already been overturned by the Supreme Court anyway. So weird that would attempt to reinstitute it.
Catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people.
The rambling, man, just gets me. Just focus on the question, dude.
That had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to...
Yeah, that's what I mean, Jared. Like, he just, yeah. He puts all this extra shit in what he says, and it makes him look incompetent.
Congress do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family.
These cases do exist. They're rare, but they do exist. So again, like, you can't say that they're not happening. It's not necessarily systemic, but they do happen, and it is not good, you know.
Are being denied IVF
treatment.
treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Abortion isn't health care.
Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
Abortion is convenience care. It's not health care. When it's health care, it's needed and necessary. Abortions are, hey, I don't want to do this right now. It's very inconvenient for my life, and I need to get rid of it. It's not health care. You could try and battle it all day if you want, but it's just not. It's just, I'm not ready. It's inconvenient for my lifestyle right now, for my financial lifestyle right now, and I need to get rid of it. And that's 90+% of the abortions in the first trimester is, hey, I'm not ready for it. But the ones that are happening electorally later on, second and third, that even though they're very rare, it should not be happening. It should not be allowed. Not even a little bit.
Body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should
I'm a
ask,
leader on fertilization,
will
baby.
she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably.
See, her microphone is still on. So again, they said it was going to be off and she wasn't going to be allowed to respond, but they left her microphone on, which is not okay.
Probably
Broke the
afterwards.
rules.
Just
They broke
look
the
at the
rules.
governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done
Yeah, that's a really good question. And let's see if she answers it.
anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
But you waited to just 6 months before the election to do anything about the current crisis.
And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened?
Why didn't you do it before? Like, she's talking about things like, she's not talking about what she's done during the current administration. She's talking about previously. And like, the other part of this, well, she's partially right. So Republicans did shoot down the immigration bill. And originally, it was because of all the money that was in it for Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russia war. And then they took that stuff out, and the Republicans still shot it down.
What happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, "Kill the bill." And you know why? Because
I don't know if that's true. And again, you'd have to find it. Like, is that really true? Fact check, please. Fact check that he actually called people up and said, "Shoot it down."
Prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
And if it's true,
and
that's
understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not.
Oh, is that what it was? Because it legalized allowing $2 million a year in?
Not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her.
Wait, he should have left this alone. Like, why are you responding to this, her, like, dig at your rallies? Who cares, dude? Just stay on topic. Again, this is the problem I have with Trump, is he focuses sometimes on the wrong things in the moment. Like, wait, she made fun of me. I want to make fun of her back real quick.
Her rallies, there's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's busing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's
huge mistake. Huge mistake, dude.
It's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela.
Okay, again, Trump, this is where Trump starts losing me in the whole debate. The country will be fine. The country has been fine through multiple presidents, likely worse than her. We've always come out the other side, especially in the past like 16 to 20 years. We're fine. We're fine. Even all the stuff through George W. Bush. Like, we came out on the other side of it. Not saying it was perfect by any means. I'm not simping for him, but like, it's not going to be the end of the world.
On steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant.
So I did find, let me just real quick. Where's my bookmarks? There was people actually posting today. So I don't know. Again, this is 25
Don't wave at me, you sorry f***ing sand monkey.
There was Haitians in a white van driving around the neighborhoods, collecting cats, skinning them, and eating them.
In my opinion, they're worthless. Bunch of worthless f***ing sand monkeys.
What did you do? Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile with your teeth. Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with it.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
You call the Humane Society to see if they'll come pick those cats.
So this is one, and who knows, I don't like, this is one of those things like, how real is it? I'd be very interested.
Okay. Do you plan on living here for much longer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard there were rumors of Haitians eating the neighbor's cats and a Canadian goose. Is that true or completely false?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't, you shouldn't have done that, man.
Community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food.
Jared.
So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says
And in
there's no
some
evidence.
respects, the guy admits like the news can't be trusted. Oh, you got this from, I mean, it was whatever. He calls him out right there on it. Again, unfairly fact checks and calls out Trump, does not do the same thing for Harris later on. And I'll make
Vice
sure
President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
Hey, these are all good people now. Don't forget. You know, again, this is one of those things like why politics just sucks. Because all of a sudden Republicans are good people and we should take them on their word. We should trust them.
including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Oh, yeah, Dick Cheney, he's a good guy. Good guy, really great fellow, and we trust his endorsement. Totally. And if anything, I don't know why Democrats wouldn't call this out. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Dick Cheney, you just invoked the name and endorsement of Dick Cheney?
Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another.
That was Dick Cheney. He didn't murder him, but he shot him. He shot him like with a shotgun. I don't think the guy died, though. I'm fairly certain he didn't die.
Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond.
Yeah, thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or bad.
Funny, Destiny actually called him out. I was like, oh, why would you brag about firing people you hired? Because this shit happens all the time. You hire people, you think you're the right people, that you put them in the right spots, they turn on you. I mean, politics is a very, very dirty game, a very dirty game, and people are always acting in their own self-interest. They rarely have this sort of team mentality. I don't want to say rarely. A lot of times they don't have the team mentality. They're in it for themselves. They're looking to take people down. So he cut the fat where he needed to, and the people that weren't supporting him and who were just overall bad people. I really can't stand when people do shit like this.
Job, I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job. And they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But
I am not a bot. Says, to be honest, I think reps were just fear-mongering about the immigrants, and all those rumors started flowing. Like, think about it. Why would Haitian immigrants eat pets? Do they want to get deported or something? What do they gain? Yeah, I wonder about some of that stuff too. I think maybe you have a case or two where maybe someone's pet gets taken or killed for any other reason, and then it's blown out of proportion. Again, this is election season, and we knew that this was going to be crazy. And I think a lot of that is due to the time in which we live and where we're at politically. He wasn't a DC insider. He took bad advice from some terrible people. Oh, absolutely, Jared. I think that's a big, big part of it.
just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history
This is a
by
hard
far.
thing to bring up.
Hey.
It's a hard thing for him to bring up because, he lost the election, and nobody is going to believe that he won at this point.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And
not a good tactic. Again, they didn't give them to her. They are exploiting the border policies that the Biden and Harris administration has implemented. It's a much better way of approaching this. But again, it pokes holes in their policy. Instead, he's basically saying, "Oh yeah, Trump and Trump and Harris are just holding the door open for all these people to come in. It's like, well, that's really not how it's going. But again, people like that's how people recite this stuff, and that's how you need to combat like discussions with people with Trump derangement.
This will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow, and I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
don't forget, fact check them. Don't forget to fact check them.
They were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said.
Yes, that's an interesting claim, and he does Muir doesn't dispute that.
That they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes.
So the national security crimes he's talking about are the classified documents, which he has every right to take. He doesn't need to ask for classified documents. He was the president of the United States. He's able to take whatever he wants on his way out. He doesn't, and he can declassify what he wants.
Election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired race.
He's allowed to take them. Presidents are allowed to take the documents that they want. I mean, Clinton's did it. Every single president has taken classified documents.
Rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision.
No, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like he can, yes, he can. And sitting presidents have taken documents. I mean, Joe Biden, as a vice president, took a lot of classified documents when he was vice president. Obama, Clinton's. Like, this is not a new thing. What's up, Iron Man? Good to see you, bro.
Decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this...
No. You answer the question.
Election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military.
And yet he never did. This is, again, it's one of those like lies from her and the Democrats that he would do these things. Well, he spent 4 years in office and never did any of them. He walked out. He fought to get a recount and to get an audit of votes, turned down everywhere. They said they had no standing, and he left. There was a peaceful transfer of power. He didn't stay. He didn't try and weaponize the court. He didn't try and weaponize the military against his political opponents the way fascists do.
Military. Understand
Later, Jared.
what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice
The courts have voted against, like, even though it's a mostly conservative Supreme Court, they don't always vote in, like, the interests of their party. That's not their job. I mean, it was unanimous in Colorado that they shut, like, when they tried to take him off the ballot for insurrection, it was unanimous as far as I know, or maybe one Democrat voted against, but I know it was a very, I'm fairly certain. You guys can check me on that. But
to stop him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported...
Andy, that's because it's their job. Their job is to interpret the Constitution, not adjudicate based on their own bias. Their job is to interpret the Constitution and make decisions based on that, not because they feel a certain way. His ear healed up perfection for having a bullet go through it perfectly. Yeah, and I noticed that too a little bit. I don't know. Again, it's a stretch to say that that was political theater. I don't know, man. I mean, people died. Yeah, obviously people died. So it wasn't fake, but it's probably, you know, where he got hit. I don't think so, man. I mean, I don't know. I don't, by him though? You think it was staged by him? You're saying you're saying that you think he was willing to kill other people to make himself look better? I don't think he's that stupid or selfish. I think Trump is a lot of things. I don't think he's smart enough or dumb enough to stage something like that. I think him actually getting some, like, I don't know. I don't know. I do find that hard to believe.
Criminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases.
They weren't trying to hit him in the earlobe. They were trying to hit him in the head. Trying to hit him in the head, and it, like, I think it by an act of miracle. But yeah, I mean, that's why I don't think it was staged, because they were actually trying to get rid of him. I don't know who they is. I'm not saying Democrats. I'm saying they.
For fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work.
The amount of times you file bankruptcy has no bearing on anything. Like, yes, his business has failed. He has a lot of successful ones. A lot of people, claim, they file for bankruptcy and they never invest in anything again. Some people reinvest and they try again. Bankruptcy is another path that one can take to clear debts. Yeah, Donald Trump has done it 6 times, but he's also come out of it several more. So again, it's not really a dig at him.
To say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice. Because
the issue is the 2 prominent parties in the U.S. They used to better represent people, like through the primaries and all that, like in campaigning. You'd be able to trim out the people who were, that didn't represent the people. And now these candidates have largely been pushed so far to the extremes that they don't really represent the everyday person. I think Trump is a better pick for that. I don't think that Harris actually represents the people. I think she might be controlled opposition here. I think she might be someone who's trying to, like, sort of, I don't want to say she's like working with that shadowy figure, but I don't think she's really the one running things. And I don't have much to back that up other than my gut feeling. So it doesn't really matter. But I don't trust that she's really working in the interest of the American people. I think she's working more in the sense of like the global economy. I think she's more in bed with the global economy and in foreign interventionist wars, and it's everything that the Democrats used to be against. I don't think she's America first, and because I think that the whole idea of America first now has been demonized to hell.
As the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling, you saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw it play out of the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. and nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret?
Right. So now he wants to clarify questions, but, you know, again, you should have been doing this the whole time. I'm sorry, you didn't answer my question. Please answer my question. That's a totally fair thing to ask.
About what you did on that day. Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about...
This is another point I wanted to fact check about whether Pelosi has anything to do with security at the Capitol. It's been refuted that she has anything to do with it. So I don't know. I do not know. But I've heard two conflicting stories.
Former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, there
was the Capitol Police. I've been looking into this. Here's my note. So 5 Capitol Police died from the Capitol from the whole incident, none of which died on the scene. No police officers died on the scene. 4 died because of suicide, and then 1, I believe, was one, I think, had like a heart attack or something, was the other one. So none of these police officers died on scene. I know that might seem trivial, but it's important.
Former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was...
They should have fact-checked. They did not fact-check her here on this. She spews a bunch of nonsense, and all of which can be debunked like immediately.
A mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that...
Let's also lie.
That when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
Not a militia.
Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear, on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, had said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of
that was they definitely showed their hand by not fact checking her on that. They should have fact checked her big time, and they didn't.
This stuff up. I ask you this: you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. We need, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's
one of the big problems I feel like is that, like, how long would this have taken had it gone, and what is the remedy? Like, if you're going to take this to court, like, courts don't work quickly, so they have to sideline everything to try and like recount. I mean, all these cases that he's bringing up, like, it would bring everything to a screeching halt. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it because of that, but you have to think, okay, who's your placeholder government? You know, like, you can't have Trump continue to be president because this would likely move into, you know, into the real transfer of power. And that is like, so again, who's in charge? Who's running the government at that point while you adjudicate all of these cases of potential voter fraud around the U.S.? Like, that is another big thing. But it doesn't make it right. You just don't have a system in place to handle it. Or I guess maybe it would fall on the Speaker of the House because they are technically the next in line after the Vice President, I believe.
That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe?
If there's actual wrongdoing, like in suppressing the election or changing election results, then yeah, people are going to go to prison. It's not suppressing your political opponents. It's actually bringing people to justice because they subverted a presidential process. Like he wasn't duly elected. So no, you're not prosecuting your political opponents. You're bringing people to justice who deserve it because they are lying. They're putting lies out there.
Believe he's trying to do here?
Yeah, the changing of voter processes would have been a good thing for him to bring up.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voter election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
He does have trouble
I'll give you 1 minute to
accepting.
respond,
Let me just add about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need...
Run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back, guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, he took the bait big time.
Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. He got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
Why is that?
What we know is that this war must end.
Areas.
It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran, and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract.
I am not a bot on Twitch says Russia has been planning to attack Ukraine for a long time. It's not like they did it because Biden. I think it was definitely it was advantageous for them to do it. I think Putin understands that Trump is a little bit more of a formidable opponent when it comes to that, and he would have stepped in or done something a little bit more forceful had it been on his watch. So I don't know. I mean, we only know what we know. I do think it would have been harder for him to have done something. He may have tried it, but I don't know if we would have been in the same position had Trump been in the president in the Oval Office.
The reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according.
Okay, again, taken out of context. He doesn't want to be a dictator. He was not a dictator. He was the president for 4 years and wasn't a dictator. He was upheld to the checks and balances like everyone else. So again, bold-faced lie. No one's going to check her on it, though.
According to himself, it is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely...
being involved with foreign politics is not a bad thing. Going to North Korea and, being diplomatic is not a sign of weakness. I do think that it was smart of him to go. I don't know what she's really trying to do. Exchange love letters. Like, again, hyperbole is not good in this case. And Trump engages in it. She engages in it. But it rallies people. It rallies the base, right? It makes people mad, angry. Yeah. Love letters. Stop doing that. That's not professional.
Well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me.
But whatever.
The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They are grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Yeah.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Just bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. What's going on?
It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look.
You know how many text messages I get from the Biden-Harris or the Harris campaign?
We're in for $250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our
this is where he like really like derails more. Like he's got to keep the thoughts going. And I know he's under a time crunch and he's trying to get everything out. And I've been in this situation where I do the same thing. It's just like word vomiting. But he's got to stay on topic, and you got to finish your thought. And he doesn't.
Our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight, Afghanistan.
She acts like he didn't spend 4 years in the Oval Office, which I think is a huge mistake. Like, Trump spent, and this is where I think a lot of people can't think outside of their own bias. Like, Trump did spend 4 years in the Oval Office. He's dealt with all of these people before. And it is convenient that all this stuff happened after the fact, right? Like, there's all this stuff could have happened prior. None of it really did. Now, again, correlation doesn't equal causation, but still, it's just funny to watch her pretend like he wasn't president.
Stan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with...
I want to know the validity of that. If she was sent in to speak with him directly, or if it was like she was sent to speak with his administration, or if that's just a bold-faced lie from Trump. definitely interested.
Her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the
Looks like, well, according to Wikipedia, this article is, okay. There have been several rounds of peace talks to halt the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the end of the Russo-Ukrainian war in an armistice. The first meeting was held 4 days after the start of the invasion. In Belarus, it concluded without result, with delegations from both sides returning to their capitals for consultation. So I think this is what he's talking about. But it doesn't look like Harris is a part. Oh, you can't fucking read it. I hate these fucking things. So dumb.
The world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy.
No, so likely what he's saying, what Trump is saying here, because he doesn't speak, he always blames them directly. What he's saying, in my opinion, is that you were sent in, your administration were sent in to negotiate a peace and you failed. So why are you all of a sudden confident that you can actually end this war?
And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with
And cue the non-answer.
President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents.
So this is one of those things that, like, everywhere, every other job on the planet requires you to take responsibility for all of your actions, right? If something goes wrong based on a decision you make, it's your fault. You are the one that has to deal with the consequences because you did it. You're a part of that administration. It's your fault. Does she bear some responsibility? Does Biden? Yes, because they decided to pull out and not follow the agreed upon, the negotiated plan to leave Afghanistan.
Said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today...
No, instead you arm our, like, worst enemy. Instead you just arm our worst enemy with some of the best weapons on the planet. That's all.
There is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President
Trump. The idea that a peace deal is not, well, it's not how I would do it, so it's bad. Like, as if other world leaders and terrible people haven't been to Camp David in the past.
Your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems.
I love this part because it sounds like he's mocking him. Like, oh, it's just Abdul. You know, just dealing with Abdul again. You know, fucking Abdul over there in fucking Sandland. That's what it sounds like he's doing.
And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
This question from Hardy Harmonica: isn't the U.S. still paying the Taliban $90 million a week? So there was something that came out recently about how they had been missing money, like $220 million that was missing, that was going to the Taliban. I don't know if it's still $90 million a week going to them, but yeah, you're hurting Kamala with your words. I want to move on. Yeah.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something.
You got to make sure that you bring in the racial politics here, because, again, it is the Democrats who have fueled this war on race and gender again. So it's really important that they bring that up, because now this is going to make people even more mad. It doesn't matter what he says at this point. I don't care. I really don't care, because, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I'm just poking fun and being stupid. But everyone takes this. It's a hard line issue, like with Democrats right now, is that race and gender are under attack. We need to make sure that everyone feels included. We can't exclude everyone. Equity for all. It's, you know, she's playing the game really well. Yeah, and that grin. Jesus.
I can care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and
that she put out.
I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me.
You should have just said.
That's up to her.
I don't care.
Your thoughts on this?
Move on.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that.
This is a guy who has been supported and who has supported people of color, to use their parlance, many, many times. many, many times. And also signed executive order, passed legislation to give more money to HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. Not trying to divide on race here. It's a very silly stance. But again, it rallies her base in a way that makes it look like she is better than she is. It's all baseless.
That we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
I want to look this up. Central Park 5 crime. Trisha Maylee's body was discovered in New York City's Central Park early in the morning, April 20th, 1989. She was badly beaten and repeatedly raped, and she remained in a coma for 2 weeks and retained no memory of the attack. Brutal assault of the 28-year-old white investment banker who had been out for a jog at night led to a widespread public outcry, and the quick arrest and subsequent conviction of 5 black and Latino teens who came to be known as the Central Park 5. But in 2002, after serving sentences ranging from 6 to 13 years for what then Mayor Ed Koch called crime of the century, new DNA evidence and a confession proved convicted rapist Matias Reyes was the true lone culprit. Okay, so he wasn't part of the... So they were charged and convicted in court, and then Trump took out an ad saying that they should be killed. So based on the facts by the court, so he had nothing to do with this. Like, so he had nothing to do with this.
Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This
right.
is
So they were found innocent several years after the fact. Brahma, I couldn't hear a lot of it that last night. That's why I'm kind of re-going over it and adding my own commentary. Yeah, the statement just means he's been terribly consistent over the decades.
is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Yeah, that was stupid. The birther shit was stupid. He shouldn't have leaned into that.
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country.
Except to the border.
We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constant.
You know, if you don't look at something, if you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like it doesn't exist.
Trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years.
This is his opportunity to nail her on her own time as a DA, and he missed it.
40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, She is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says, she is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
You know, and the inflation thing, again, I find is likely due to a lot of this stuff is an effect of COVID. You know, I think some of it has to do with that. So I don't think it's entirely at their feet, but, you know, again, this is a debate and no one's been honest really the whole time.
And she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time's up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about.
Well, that's, you know, again, it's the stuff surrounding COVID was bad, you know, and that, again, it's a lot of the same. Is this all I mean? There's the all-encompassing event of COVID and the stuff surrounding it led to a lot of this, and which is out of her control. And likely Trump would have had to deal with the same exact shit in rhetoric at this point. You know what I mean? They would have, whoever would have been if he had been elected, whoever was the Republican candidate now would be defending what Trump did in the very same way that she's trying to do it. So
our plans, and
that makes sense.
And let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of
just to inflate the cost of homes. Not really helpful.
Conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling.
She's done a lot of name calling this whole debate. She called him a liar. She's called him a felon a couple times. I believe she was the first to engage in that sort of rhetoric. So she doesn't really have much of a leg to stand on here. She's really no better.
Turn the page.
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy. Let's turn to policy.
Turn the page and move forward. Right. That would require you to also do that, but we don't lead by example. We just we say empty platitudes and move along.
Move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has a plan to not allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to
President Trump.
the
President
former
Trump.
president has said something twice that I need to respond.
So
No, I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. It's not very good today. And what it
was another Hail Mary save attempt there. And when they did, you know, they pulled her out of it. This was not really good for, I mean, a lot of people are attacking this part of the debate as well. You know, he said he's just going to keep Obamacare because we don't have anything right now. Yes, they're working on something. He couldn't detail it. So a lot of the leftist commentators are saying like, this was this is bullshit. If Biden had said this, y'all would be attacking him. Like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I didn't care that he didn't have a fully fledged plan right now because I don't think that's at the top of the list to figure out. The healthcare system is extremely complicated, and what Obama did was a first step, but it 100% needs to be looked at again. But it's not going to be. It's not on the. It shouldn't even be on the table right now.
Said that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them.
Yeah, the time to really make a change is kind of past us, King. But it's going to take so much to get back to it. What's up, Sheep? You're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. Dude, the Abdul shit was so funny, that whole...
Let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do...
You forget, too, like what Trump was trying to do within the healthcare system was beneficial. Bringing down the cost of insulin was a huge step forward. They undid it and then redid it. Him requiring healthcare providers to have like basically a price list of what was going on was really good. It hasn't been implemented yet, which is bizarre. Trump has no plan. I think Trump has a plan, and he has had plans in the past, but he's horrible at like getting those out. Kamala cackles a lot. Yeah. What's up, Leon?
Is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something...
It's not important is what it comes down to. There's honestly, there's bigger things happening in the world. Like, and again, it's a completely fine reason to not have the full plan and to have a concept of one and working towards one, because the things that need to be done in this country is not necessarily healthcare reform right now. We're in a much different place. So that's just kind of where it's at.
Something. I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have.
This debate will be cherry picked by dishonest people who want to make their own, who make their support look good. Yeah. I agree. I mean, no one's looking at this. I'm trying to take a very like equal approach to it, because I think Trump flubbed a lot. I think Harris flubbed plenty as well. They did not challenge Harris nearly as much as they did Trump, and for good reason. I mean, good reason as far as they're concerned, right? They don't like Republicans. They don't like Trump. You know, they're going to push him. They're not going to push her. They want to make her look good.
To do that, and you'll be hearing about it.
That's not even a conspiracy. Like, she's good friends with the head of ABC. You know, I think with the host there, she's like good friends. So he's already said it numerous times. Top priority day one is the economy, ending wars in the border. For sure.
In the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point.
I'm not going to do what you're asking me to do. I'm going to do something completely different because I'm a girl boss.
That the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times.
Because it's junk.
I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States.
I'll never forget the early morning hours when I was with my grandpappy and we was on the front porch and listening to the news on the old AM transmitter. And this old man, fucking Christ, lady, shut up.
Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being...
Remember, Democrats, celebrate these Republicans that you now hold in such high regard. It's politically expedient to celebrate John McCain and Dick Cheney now. These are good people. Take them at their word.
You don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people.
Well, you've been here for 5 minutes, Leon. You haven't seen the parts where I was calling Trump a fucking idiot. So
people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf.
Affordable Care Act is garbage, by the way. I had to get marketplace insurance in between jobs. My wife's in between jobs, and it sucked. Like it's awful. Like it doesn't cover hardly anything. It's certainly better than paying like full price, but like it's still bad. It's still bad.
Half of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president.
This was something that Trump did, though. Trump had capped the price of insulin, and then they rolled it back and then redid it.
We have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the
problem is that someone's got to pay for it. It's not a right if it, like, and we said this last night on the panel, like, something is a right, like, if we have to pay for it, it's not a right. But all this stuff costs money, like surgeries, all this stuff. So it's not a basic human right. Everyone should have access to healthcare. I don't think anyone wants to dispute that, but it does cost money, and the system needs to be figured out.
Has to be
to
strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Exactly.
Fastest pro-law in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
You made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight?
The climate change has been an existential threat for the past like 50 years. It's been a political talking point to sway people one way or another, to garner whatever support they need, to get bills passed that they need. It's just, at this point, I don't want to say it's a lie, because I think things are happening in the global climate, but not to the extent that people consider, or that science is telling us, and all that. The science. And I'm not saying that parts of the world aren't hotter than they usually are, but climate's also cyclical. We've been having this discussion forever, and it hasn't gone anywhere. We're still here. There's no holes in the ozone layer. There's no, places haven't been cooked to death. Places haven't frozen over. There doesn't seem to be any signs of that happening. Still 110 degrees in the desert.
Climate change, and Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real.
Right, these people are still flying everywhere on their jets. They're driving everywhere. All this talk about fossil fuel burning and all that. They're still polluting way more. They tell us don't ride your cars, carpool. Meanwhile, it's like, oh, I'm going to take my jet over to the city.
Ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have
problem with boasting about clean energy production in like electric cars and all that stuff is that these cobalt mines in China and overseas are like run by slave labor. It's some of the worst conditions on the planet. There's nothing to brag about as far as that goes.
Created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many
How many manufacturing jobs have we lost in the past 3 years? Weak manufacturing measures raise specter of U.S. economic slowdown. This was published on September 3rd. U.S. factories remained in slowdown mode in August, fueling fears about where the economy is headed, according to separate manufacturing gauges. The Institute of Supply Management's monthly survey of purchasing managers showed that just 47.2% reported expansion during the month, below the 50% break-even point for activity. Though this was slightly above the 46.8% recorded for July, it was below the Dow Jones consensus call for 47.9%. While still in contraction territory, U.S. manufacturing activity contracted slower compared to last month. Demand continues to be weak. Output declined, and inputs stayed accommodative, said Tim Fiore, chairman of the ISM Manufacturing Business Survey Committee. Demand remains subdued as companies show an unwillingness to invest in the capital and inventory due to current federal monetary policy and election uncertainty. While the index level suggests contraction in the manufacturing sector, Fiore pointed out that any reading above 42.5% generally points to expansion across the broader economy. That's interesting. It was weaker than expected reading last month that sent markets further into a tailspin, ultimately costing the S&P 500 about 8.5% before recovering most of the losses. Further downward lurch in the PMI points in the manufacturing sector, acting as an increased drag in the economy midway through the third quarter. Forward-looking indicators suggest the drag could intensify in the coming months. Interesting.
In many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to...
Yeah, I have it sped up a little bit.
Sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we
Dude, it's crazy. I gave up YouTube Premium, and I just go in poor boy route. And yeah, I deal with it all the time. Stupid.
We can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families.
The opportunity economy thing is, it's a thing that Democrats are going to try and play as her strength. You know, the increased child tax credit for the first year, the small business tax break, and the housing credit. But all this stuff will likely have a negative effect
in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving.
What are we protecting seniors from?
Hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
This is BS. The push against even the term MAGA at this point is insane. You can't say that you want to make America great again without someone wanting to like disown you, like a member in your family wanting to be like, oh no way, like I don't want to be involved with that. That's awful. That means you're a fascist. That means that you want a dictator. Like, no, I want our country to like flourish and be in a good spot. Like she does care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. She does. And a lot of her constituents believe that.
Okay. And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans.
Trump is definitely a selfish
dude. And focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had...
So the thing about the vice president, the biggest advantage the vice president has is that she's one of the biggest advisors to the president. Beyond that, she presides over the Senate. She is a tie-breaking vote, and she certifies the election in January. That's like really her main functions. And oftentimes she finds herself in diplomatic situations. But like she has less power than I think people really give her credit for. Like, the vice presidency in general. But you're still the top advisor to the president. She does have pull, but he's giving her more credit, which is a mistake.
3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David.
Yeah, Trump stumbled in a lot of spots. I don't think that this was his best showing. I don't think that I don't know if this was an election, or sorry, a debate that he swayed people in. It's no surprise that she gained a couple points and he lost a couple points at the end of this, like 100%. It is what it is. Oh, hold on. Dang. So yeah, I do think that this election is going to be really interesting, and this debate set an interesting this whole election season has set an interesting precedent. You should have told the mediators that he's there to debate Kamala and not the committee. Yeah, and that's the thing is this. People will laugh at the whole idea like, oh, Trump was 3v1. Again, if you can step outside your personal bias, like, would I prefer to see Trump in? I believe Trump more than the average person. I don't necessarily think he's a great guy, but I think right now he's being unfairly treated in the media sphere and has been unfairly treated. And it's insane to say otherwise. Yeah, he should have called them out. Did either candidate hurt or help themselves with independence? I don't think the needle moved. Yeah, I don't think it swayed anyone. I think both people sort of caught on to the madness a little bit, especially the independents. They already know the lies based around Charlottesville and all that shit that she said. They understand like the whole eating cats shit was so dumb. He never should have brought that up. It was so incredibly bad. Harris voters will say she won, and then Trump voters will say, yeah, oh yeah. And really the political commentators are going to run on either side. They're going to run both of them to death. You're already seeing all the progressives and leftists like Destiny and those guys, clowning on Trump for bringing up the cats and all that stuff. The big issue is that Trump is a horrible orator. Like he cannot properly get his thoughts out, and he's against the clock, right? He has 2 minutes to respond. Kamala, whatever her fucking name is she's much better at speaking publicly and to the point. Trump is way too verbose and scatterbrained, and it hurts him a lot of times. I want a second debate where he's more composed. I think that's about as composed as he's going to get with her. I think she played the game perfect. She played her role perfect in that she pushed his buttons. He did what he could to stay composed to start, and then he lost it once she hit certain points. I want actually effort to go into policies they can amplify the border and the economy. They need to get more deep into policy. Like it should be something that's required of these candidates. Like I don't know how you would require that, but it should be like within the election guidelines that you need to set out at least like 10 policy points that you're willing to like sort of modify, change, update, whatever, so people actually know who they're voting for. This like the mudslinging thing is stupid. I want spreadsheets. I want a couple Excel spreadsheets right now. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be my review of the presidential debate from last night. That is what did she say? I don't think she pushed any buttons. She said bullshit that went unchecked, and the media just called him on almost everything starting 1/3 into the debate. And yeah, no, you're right. You're right, Sheep. You're right. You're 100% right. And that's probably where he's, it got into his head, like, hey, they're not even checking her, and yet everything I say is under a microscope. So, but guys, thank you so much. This was an awesome review of the debate. I'm glad I got to do it again. I'm glad I didn't have to split it into 2 parts. It was really awesome. Thank you guys for watching and hitting the like button. It's like I want to do more stuff like this, covering it, and then also trying to get more information on what's going on. I plan on, I've made a lot of notes, and I want to try and go back and really look at all the facts that might be behind all this stuff. So thank you guys so much. Shags is LGBTQ as fuck. Peace out. Thank you, Sheep. Always good to see you, brother. Appreciate you. Hope you're working hard. Yeah, I'm out of here. You guys be good. We'll see you guys next time. See you later.
I like to put stuff online.